I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. Today we're talking with Alex from the Frontier Trading Company about his recent expedition to the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association Spring National Shoot, what it was like for him as a new and upcoming young competitor, some of the tips and tricks that he learned, and then just some updates from Alex about some of his living history projects and his muzzleloading related things that he's got going on. This podcast is brought to you by Muzzleloader Magazine, the publication for traditional black powder shooters. Since 1974, Muzzleloader has been the leading magazine devoted to traditional black powder hunting and shooting. Each issue is jam-packed with articles on hunting, shooting, gunsmithing, do-it-yourself projects, living history, American history, book and product reviews, and much, much more. Muzzleloader Magazine is the best traditional muzzleloading magazine, bar none. I'd like to thank Jason at Muzzleloader Magazine for his continued support of I Love Muzzleloading and the I Love Muzzleloading podcast.
I remember the first time we did this, I didn't have notes in front of me, but I just spent a lot of time reviewing like my content and like walking through my story. It was like the first long form talking thing that I'd ever done. So I was super nervous, but no, this time I got nothing. I'm laying on the couch. So
okay, good. Good. That's what I want. Yeah. You know, I'm just a goober and you're not intimidated.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I've eased up a little bit.
Good. So what got you back to Friendship this year? I know you'd been, I think, at least once last year, but you came this year with kind of a different mission. What was the build up to that?
I definitely wanted to shoot more. You know, first time I came to Friendship was the summer that I built my long rifle. I got a university grant, went to the WKU NMLRA gunsmithing seminar, fresh member and everything. Everybody there at that class told me, if you want to get outfitted, you got to go to Friendship. So the mission that first summer was, get all the basic shooting accoutrements. It was the only place I knew of that I could get all those things in person and handle them and see them, talk to the makers. So it's a really valuable, thing for that. It really helped me out in that early period. Mm-hmm. Second summer, I came back looking to shoot more, that time, I think, than I had over the past year. I probably ran 5 or 6 shots through the rifle. I was still in college. I'd go home, fire it once or twice, clean it like a madman, and put it up again. But yeah, this past summer, this just a couple weeks ago, the whole purpose of going there was to really shoot and hopefully to identify some things. Ideally, with some mentorship. It was great to have you along on the woods walk. But to identify things that I could work on specifically. More recently, I contacted a high school buddy, big time hunter. This is like the Steven Ranella of my generation. My friend John, shout out John. We're going to try and get out on a deer hunt this fall.
Nice.
And so we were talking about, groupings. And for the first time, I was really forced to examine my total lack of skills as a shooter. It's easy to, have the gun in videos and carry it and you can look the part, at least to the extent that I do right now. There's still work to be done on the kit, but pretty well looking the part, but the skills just are not there. I would say I've probably pulled the trigger less than 100 times on a muzzleloader in my life. So it was a really great experience because I think my first shot was a total flash in the pan. I had some funny stuff throughout. You gave me a great tip about wiping the bottom of the flint off so that it, sparks properly when it strikes the frizz. All of those things could prevent that dream shot at a deer if I'm fortunate this fall. Mm-hmm. And that would just kill me to mess up that opportunity. I got a friend that's willing to take time and go out and do this together. And I don't want to mess that up. So I got to dial in. I'm trying to get in touch with a local muzzleloading club and get out and start shooting with them weekly. Hopefully pull those groupings together. And I hope that by fall, maybe I've run a couple hundred. It would be awesome to say that I'm approaching 1,000 shots total. Mm-hmm. But if I can get free reign at one of these ranges locally here, I may very well try and do that. So this past visit at Friendship was definitely that opportunity to dial things in, identify areas for improvement, and then hopefully carry that stuff forward. Yeah.
So as a young adult now out of school, what was it like and how did you approach getting to Friendship? It's hard for me because I've gone for so long to think of it as somebody who's only been there a few times. What was that planning process like and how did you camp while you were there? How did you stay?
Yeah. There's kind of two routes I think you can go when you go to events. You can really double down and try and shoot for full documentability of everything and really rough it. Or you can bring the cooler with you and kind of hang out and just look to have a good time in a sort of historical environment. Friendship especially has been, good to me because you can do either one. There are people back there in that primitive area who are really roughing it. And there's other people who are just there to have a good time. It's a shoot above all. It's not necessarily a living history event. So the rules are a little more relaxed, and that's awesome if you're a beginner. So I feel like this summer I kind of walked the line between the two. I was in a little oilcloth. I had my buffalo hide and a blanket. And pretty much just I packed everything in on my back. I was, proud of that.
Yeah.
Cut a little limb down, some deadfall off the tree line there, and set up my little shelter. It was comfortable enough, but you can still walk out of that primitive area and grab a snow cone or a big ice cream sundae and cool off.
So
you can really walk the line at Friendship, and I guess that's what I tried to do. With the shooting itself, though, the actual cleanup and everything, I got a big range box. It's a toolbox my grandpa gave me. My dad painted it red, and then I've covered it in stickers now. I got your Deadhead Long Hunter sticker on there.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Yeah, and the NMLRA logo and stuff. So I've stickered it out, and it's full of all the shooting accoutrements. I got files and steel wool and the moose milk bottle and everything in there. But I tried my best this time to leave that in the trunk. I'd kind of roughed it last summer when I camped out there. I had the same oilcloth. Didn't have a buffalo hide yet, but I was in there in a blanket. But I had that shooter's box and a big cooler in the back of my tarp. And there's nothing wrong with that. But this time I tried to leave those things in the trunk and carry in what I needed.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that, But I think for me, this past time at Friendship also highlighted some of those pieces of my kit that I will need to improve if I want to do something that is juried, where I'm shooting for that full documentation. It was starkly realized as I'm looking down at my handmade moccasins and some really authentic pieces of kit with a plastic bottle of Ballistol in my hand. And so there's things like that start to become more glaring issues if you want to really pursue that bulletproof historic authenticity. So it was valuable for that. But I mean, as far as prep goes, probably a lot less prep than you've got going down with the family. Everything I took fit in my trunk. And I was able to leave work a little early on a Thursday. Fortunately, was able to take that Friday off and just cruised on down and pretty much left at my leisure. Woke up Sunday morning, drove home peacefully enough. So not a whole lot of really extreme prep anymore. I can, for the most part, have everything ready to go in a closet, and I can toss it in the trunk and drive. Nice.
I love to hear that. And the events that you can go to where it's just, you throw your stuff in the trunk and go. I mean, that's about as easy as it gets. That's great.
For sure. Yeah. Especially where food is concerned too. That's another thing that I really appreciate about the shoot is that you can go down to the cafeteria and get a really great meal for $10 that, that could have been me around a fire making ash cakes if I were out on a camp that same weekend. So various, little levels of modern cooking and amenities are a big help.
Yeah, I think that's what's great about, there's a lot of great things about muzzleloading, obviously, but there's a lot of variety in these events. We were both at Martin Station earlier this year, which was a very different event than an NMLRA shoot. And I like how you put it, though, that the shoots at Friendship are kind of a cross section, and you can kind of enjoy it how you want to. I did not, and I wish I didn't bring any of my period gear, basically, or any of my period clothing. And I should have, because I was shooting with all my friends in their period gear and clothing. And I was sitting there in my summer shorts and my boots.
I love muzzleloading merch.
Yeah. But, it's cool to be around everybody doing that and enjoying different parts of it, on the main firing line where everybody's in, blue jeans or shorts or something, or over on the primitive range where you have a mix of 18th and 19th century stuff, where you have that rendezvous period kind of sprinkled in there for levity and fun. I think that's something that's kind of unique about Friendship, is that you can go and enjoy all parts of muzzleloading history just about in one location.
Yeah, most definitely.
So with your goal to shoot, what was that like as a new shooting enthusiast, I guess, at Friendship? You know, what you came down on Thursday. What did you do on Friday then to get ready and do a little shooting?
Yeah, I guess, members are able to come out and shoot on those grounds year round. So it did arrive a little early on Friday. Didn't actually realize the shoot didn't start until Saturday, but walked up to that primitive range nonetheless with a couple of friends and put a couple of shots down range, just enough to get confident. I realized on the drive down there that I had not fired the rifle since I was there last year. Which is kind of a painful realization, especially as I'm sitting here dreaming about getting out after an actual live animal.
Yeah.
So I tried to get up there and I put a couple of shots into one of those gongs, maybe at 20 yards, and I hit it a couple of times. I felt good about that. So that's really the extent of my shooting, though. On Friday, it was just getting back into the rhythm of things, trying to get like the nervous energy out. I'm still not necessarily over the initial intimidation of pulling that trigger when I've taken the rifle down for the first time in a year. As I'm bringing it up to my face, I'm like, did I put a ball in there? And just stupid stuff like that, that I think is probably pretty common among new shooters. So yeah, I guess just work some of that stuff out and then hit the woods walk, and maybe not to phenomenal result, but Saturday we were able to get out and shoot.
Yeah.
But like I said, the purpose was to identify some of those things that I could work to improve on. And the great thing about shooting at Friendship too, I was up at the primitive range and there was another gentleman there, older guy. I could tell he'd been shooting for a really long time. And he just kind of had a watchful eye on me, which I really appreciated. I felt like at any moment, I could have turned to him and said, hey, what are some areas I could improve on? It could have turned into an impromptu lesson, and it's great to be around mentorship like that and experience. There may not be another spot in the country that has that density of shooters. Like if you added up the years of shooting experience on that property that weekend, there may not be another gathering like that around the nation. At least I'm not aware of one. So you really have a lot of experience at your fingertips, especially if you're young. There's such a desire to see young people in this hobby that nobody is going to be, making rude remarks or trying to correct you. If you ask for help, it's there. And that's a really special thing about the event too.
Yeah. So walk us through the woods walk a little bit. You're going to have a video about it out here in some time, which I don't want you to spoil necessarily. But for somebody out there, who maybe hasn't shot one, what was that like as one of your first woods walks that you've ever been on?
Yeah, so I didn't even know really what a woods walk was until that first summer I went. My rifle was partially completed, strapped into my passenger seat, so I didn't do any shooting that first time. Mm-hmm. But I went and I saw it, and at least looked at kind of the trailhead. And so essentially what you're looking at is a trail through a woods. At the head, there's kind of a little shed where you check in. You'll take a clipboard, and that lists all the targets as you move, so that as you go through the trail and shoot at those targets, you can record, hits and misses. And then at the end, you'll submit that, and that's, that data is being collected. I suppose there's probably winners those matches. Not that I may ever be among that list.
Oh, you'll get there.
We'll see. But that's the logistics of it. It's simple enough. You'll register to shoot for the weekend, and then once you're up there, I think it's $5 to do the woods walk, which is nothing when you get to see some of these targets are very intricate, and you can tell there's some maintenance, that's required to keep a shoot like that going. But I think there's maybe 18 targets.
Yeah, I think there's 18 total. Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, you start out, stuff seems easy enough. Like I said to you, that first shot I took, I think was a total flash in the pan, and a huge flinch on my part too.
Yeah, we were goofing on you a little bit for that one.
yeah, for sure. The great thing, there's not a lot of great things about lugging camera equipment around when you're in period gear, but the great thing about doing that when you're shooting is that you can review that footage. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you guys were joking me a little bit, but I watched that after in my campsite that night and thought, man, I really, really did flinch. So those are things you can work to dial in. And just immediately after taking that shot, I steadied myself and took another shot and got back on target and didn't flinch like a crazy man again. So initial dialing in those first couple shots as you go along the walk, and then targets get harder, they get more intricate. I couldn't recall every single one of them, but a hanging chain, shooting a popsicle stick in half. Great job with that, by the way.
Yeah.
What a feat. There's some really fun little targets in and through that walk. One of the things I was really proud of, I got to shoot the woods walk last summer, and about halfway through, I got my ramrod stuck at the bottom of my barrel. I had put a patch on my cleaning implement dry. I don't know what came over me, but my barrel was so clogged up with powder. It was humid. I was shooting 2F, and I ran a patch down there and just got it stuck. And it took a significant amount of ballistol and some vice grips to pull that thing out. I had to walk off the range, and by the time I was ready to shoot again, the woods walk was closed for the day. So I really botched that attempt last summer. So to have gotten out there, first of all, I was able to do the woods walk without having to run any patches down it. And we talked about some of those things, some lessons learned there. But was able to do it with a clean gun, also had enough powder and ball on me, because last summer I realized I was back in my sight trying to get this ramrod out, that I was about near out of powder halfway through there. I had a real tiny little horn I was carrying. I just wasn't prepared for it,
Mm-hmm.
So just completing it this year was a huge level up. I got enough shots downrange to say that I hit all 18 targets. I was at least able to shoot at them.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, it's a great experience. And like I said, that mentorship is there. You were certainly there, like right over my right shoulder. At one point, what was that? The ball kind of fell down the barrel without a patch.
Yeah.
And I was standing there just looking at my muzzle, like, did I really I just fumbled around right at the muzzle, and I was kind of holding my hand in the shape of a funnel there and dropped the ball, and just whoop, right down it went. And I heard it kind of spin down the barrel, and I was like, oh, but I didn't know. In that moment, I thought I might have just ruined the rifling in my barrel. And then I stopped for a minute after I kind of said, I just dropped the ball down there. And I was like, wait, lead is softer than steel.
Yeah.
It's just silly, like little apprehensive, just nerves like that and uncertainty that you're able to just expel when you're out there on a range with friends that have more experience, that are able to help you out. So thanks for filling that role for me.
Of course, man. Yeah. It's difficult when you're out there with something that you've invested a significant amount of money and time into. You want to take care of it. I was talking yesterday about muzzleloaders that are worth more than the car that I drive every day, being out there and being used to hunting out in the woods, and in the rain and things. And, there's a part of you that wants to protect this thing and keep it around forever. But, there's a lot of guns 250, 300 years old still bouncing around out there that you could likely just go out and shoot all the same.
Yeah. So
those little instances in the moment can feel just absolutely devastating. And I think that's something that's nice about having, a kind of a communal event like the woods walk, where you can go out with a set of buddies, or even if you don't have a group of people you're going with there at that match specifically, they'll just throw you in with a group and they'll welcome you with open arms to go through the course with, which is always a lot of fun.
Yeah, most definitely. And that, for the record, that's how I shot it last summer. I was out there, that ramrod got stuck, and there's 2 or 3 other guys with me, kind of looked over, and they're like, well, we've all done it,
Yeah.
And walk back up to the trailhead. There's somebody there with a can of compressed air with a little nozzle to put in that touch hole and try and shoot it out that way. They really are able to roll out the red carpet. If you're a novice, you're having problems, there's people there to help you out. And that is the great thing. You can just show up on your own and look to shoot, and you'll get thrown in with a group of guys who have most likely been doing it for quite a while. So it's just a phenomenal place to tap into that mentorship. And like I had to do, kind of get rid of some of those nervous habits and stuff. So
what was your favorite target from the woods walk that you hit or didn't, just something that you enjoyed?
Yeah. I really have a thing for those cards that are set sideways. And for, listeners, I'm talking about a playing card that's physically sideways to you, and you're trying to shoot this thing in half. That was like an old Boy Scout camp thing. And back when I first got into this hobby, I was teaching wilderness survival merit badge at a scout camp in a, pioneer sort of historically immersive area in Ohio. So we used to go up to the rifle ranges though on, staff nights or staff lunches, and you kind of impromptu shoots would pick up, and you could go up there and try and shoot a card. And I did that one summer when I was like 12. And I think I still have that card on my childhood bedroom mirror, tucked into it's one of my like proudest little childhood possessions.
Oh yeah, dude.
So there's just like a glee about being able to shoot something so tiny, just a feeling of accomplishment that comes with it. So I did not hit it this year. I never have on the woods walk, but maybe one of the times I'll be able to cut the card. What's your favorite though? I'd be curious to know.
Oh man, hitting that popsicle stick was quite the rush.
Yeah.
I think that's like the second or third target on the woods walk, and going out with, going out with you and Jay. And, I hadn't really shot a whole lot really since like last fall with my flintlock. Things have just been so busy, and pulling up on that second or third shot and busting that popsicle stick, that just kind of like set the tone for me. I was like, okay, I can do this. Yeah, I can shoot. Let's go.
Yeah, it set the tone for me too. I was like, Ethan is the man. That became the tone of the woods walk. Yep.
It was just that's what's fun about that. And I did the mountain man there the next day with Nick, who's kind of hanging around there in Primitive with us. And some days, those kind of challenge matches, I call them, some days, boy, you can just be on fire and you're just knocking things over and cutting cards in half and this and that. And you could go out the next day and it could be the same course and you could miss half of them. And that's just something I think is fun about those kind of courses, is you could be a really good shooter and still be lucky to hit half of them. Just the lighting, the temperature. I mean, all day there Saturday, we were just fighting the humidity like nothing else. I mean, I was trying to shoot a 395 ball in my 40 on a really humid day, and it was just gummy as all get out. It was wild.
Yeah, that was something else. I mean, I left that woods walk with like a big black, I told you, it felt like I walked out of a campfire coming out of there. My hands were black. I had like char pretty much all over my shirt. That was something else.
And I think it's those kind of imperfect situations that really are kind of a trial by fire. I mean, it's not like you're in a survival situation like you would have been in the 18th century. And I think we talked about a little bit that morning that, it's a little removed. I mean, they had shooting competitions, but they weren't necessarily taking 18 shots over, they weren't necessarily shooting that much in a row unless you were in a combat situation usually, I guess. But
sure.
So you're a little bit divorced from the historical aspect of it, but you're still encountering the same kind of issues that they could have encountered, after taking a variety of shots. I mean, if you were out as a market hunter that day, taking, a stack of game in the woods, you probably didn't clean after each and every shot. You were dealing with some of the same issues that we were that day, which is always fun to think about, I think.
Yeah, most definitely. It makes you wonder too. I mean, there's a lot of glamorous stories about, Daniel Boone with the super long shot, stuff like that. And you see these things documented, but how many really awful instances happened with hang fires or flash in the pan, or any number of those issues could have gone wrong due to humidity or any number of variables. You're being pursued. There's so many different avenues that those stories must have unfolded and were never documented because it really meant lives. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, we don't live in the time period. We can divorce ourselves from that, like you said. But I think, like the NMLRA, the friendship, even that first time I showed up there, it kind of felt like home. Like I was just very comfortable there, despite not being a shooter. And while you were saying that just now, I thought back to those days in scouting. And what I used to tell people, the beautiful thing about the scouting program is that you can go there without fear of failure. And maybe climbing the rock climbing wall is the best example. If you fall off of that, somebody physically has got you. You're not going to get hurt. Mm-hmm. And it's, very similar at a shoot like that, where there's, folks like you, people with a lot of experience there on the range all around you, everywhere you look, that are able to guide you through those things so that, it's by no means a life or death situation.
Right.
Even in our modern times, it's not even a source for embarrassment, to have made a minor issue like that.
Yeah.
Which is, it's just a tremendous testament to the character, I think, of everybody there and of the shooting community.
That's very kind of you to say. It is. It can be intimidating going in, and especially with, so many really serious competitive marksmen there. I mean, there's a lot of people that go there to win. And when they're on the line or at the range, I mean, that's just where their head is at. But there's also a lot of, I mean, those people, when they're done with their relay, they're going to help you out. And I think that really shows, and it's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, most definitely. You got to have them for inspiration too. You got to have people to look up to.
Exactly. Yeah. Just it's a sport. I mean, it is America's shooting sport, I think, or it's America's original national sport. Sorry, baseball, but marksmanship is that's it. And with a muzzleloader, it doesn't get any better.
Yep.
So, are you going to be? What can we do to get you shooting like the Mountain Man match and some of the other more rigorous primitive matches in the fall? Are you coming back with plans to do more of those, or are you going to keep it kind of an even keel like you have here in June?
Yeah, I think I might as well throw in and see how it goes. I'd like to do that. I've been watching some of your videos. Your short has really trended on YouTube. I know we discussed, and that content, there's nothing like watching that. It's exciting just to watch. So to be a part of it would really, I think, check a box for me. That I've watched that Mountain Man competition, I think last summer at Friendship, and I was like, I'd never seen somebody start fire with flint and steel so fast.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is it that I'm striking my flint 20 times to get a fire started? And I realized I had like a flint rock. Like there was not a single hard edge on that thing,
Yeah.
So just watching, you're able to learn things, which is great about your content, especially. You don't even have to go to the event to watch it. You can dial in a lot of your gear before you go. So I think that's what I'll have to do. I'll have to dial in some gear and make sure that I'm well equipped to go into something like that. But yeah, once I'm there, I might as well throw in and see how it goes.
Yeah. If for you and any listener out there, they have something called the Valley Aggregate at the primitive range there. And I think it's probably 4 or 5 different matches that your scores get totaled up in. So one of those is the Mountain Man, which is, fire starting, tomahawk and knife throwing, and then a variety of different shooting targets, that are pretty difficult. It was pretty tense there on the line because we were really separating us out on marksmanship there. But then they have, something like they call the Seneca run, where I think it's 10 shots and you have to complete it, I think in 10 minutes, maybe. I could be wrong there, but you have to run between your shots and move and load and take your shots. I guess it's more of those challenge matches. It's a bunch of challenge matches lined up, and then everything's totaled up for what they call the Valley Aggregate. So you really get to run a gambit of some of those historically inspired matches. And I believe each of those matches is inspired by some historical story or account. So while it's, in a modern sense, you're splitting a ball on an axe, that kind of thing. It's still a lot of fun, and it is challenging. And I think for guys like you and me that want to get out and suffer a little bit, they're fun shooting matches.
Yeah. I got a big smile. I would love to get out and suffer a little bit in some of those. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we'll have to catch up in the fall and try to catch some of those, because that's one of my goals is to go back and bring all my gear and really do it right. Because hanging out in my shorts and my T-shirt, I didn't realize how out of place I was until Tim Hamlin, the range officer there at the primitive range, came back there and started hollering that I wasn't dressed right, and I've known Tim since I was a kid, and he was just goofing on me, but it was kind of like, I should have something on here.
Yeah. You look fine.
So you talk about dialing in your gear a little bit. That seems to have been a theme for you at the events that I've seen you at this year. So what kind of changes are you looking to make this year to your gear and equipment?
Yeah, I was fortunate to get into the hobby, at least when I really started taking it seriously, and that was in these college years. Was fortunate to get in with a little bit of mentorship and enough instruction that at least my clothing, my leggings, my shirt were of the right material. I would dare to say of the right color for the most part. So in general, I think, my gear looks pretty good, but my focus really now has turned to clothing. And what I'm forced to confront are that, the big box store shirts and even my waistcoat or waistcoat, as some call it, especially in the period, those things, my hunting shirt, are pretty sorely off for the exact time period that I'm looking to pursue, especially in fit. Which is just, that's the thing that you got to deal with if you want to buy something that's pre-done, unless you're working with a seamstress or a tailor specifically using your measurements to assemble some of those things. And I had never taken it to that extent. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to. But now that I've gotten into it a lot deeper, I've ordered some material. I got a lot of linen here, enough to make more than a few shirts. So I'm going to start with hand sewing some shirts, some simpler, more basic projects like that. Having, made a couple of these housewife sewing kits and some leather bags and some things like that, the confidence is there to at least, start a project like that. And then the mentorship, I feel, is in place that if I start to run adrift at any point in that process, I can reach out to somebody and get some additional direction if I need it. So the next big push for me in terms of gear is going to be surrounding clothing. I think most of the other kit that I carry, the rifle, tomahawk, knife, all the basics, I think those are pretty well up to par. And once I've checked off some of the signature clothing items that I need, I'll probably turn attention back to those in coming years.
Yeah.
But this year, School of the Long Hunter has become a sort of staple event for me. I made a point of promising a lot of people at that event that next year I would come back in a fully hand-sewn outfit.
Oh, nice.
Sort of for the evaluation of some of the old timers there that have really been through the hobby for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a ever-present goal in the front of my mind that I'm absolutely prioritizing, and I hope not to the point that I'm sewing shirts instead of editing videos.
Right.
But it really is, hand sewn or bust within a calendar year of that event. So the clock's ticking. I really want to get to work on those things. And I think the authenticity, just in terms of the color, the fit, will really, really increase, I hope, in this coming year.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great. And I love that you've been sharing that part of your story. Is I think the best way I can put it is, you're learning along the way, and these a lot of times just become projects that join up to make this whole ensemble. And it's great to see you progressing through that. You focused on things here and there, and now you're looking at really tying it all together with the hand sewn aspect of it. It's something that I've been flirting with myself, and this spring I've really modified my hunting shirt from the split Wagoneers frock that I just had around that was the right material, and it's now a full-fledged appropriate hunting shirt with the pleated sleeves and the cape, and there's a real sense of accomplishment going through and making those changes and kind of getting down to the real nitty-gritty, I guess, on the technical aspects of it, making sure that everything's right.
Yeah, most definitely. I think, it's a funny thing because when I was 14 working at summer camp, wearing I had these ridiculous like breeches on with no buttons at the knees. They were like capris. Mm-hmm. And I had a shirt that was completely oversized with a huge tear down the back. And most of that summer I was wearing Nike sneakers because I just couldn't figure out how to make moccasins.
Yeah.
And I would sit out in the woods and I thought I was Daniel Boone.
Right.
I mean, I would look around me in a wilderness in my home state of Ohio that was probably something similar to what somebody could have sat on that same piece of land a couple hundred years ago and seen. And I would look down at my sleeves, that were all tattered, and I just thought I was a woodsman.
Yeah.
And now, I could go back to that same property and camp, and I have in past years in the clothing that I have now, and think, man, I'm a woodsman. But every time there's something new, you look down and you're like, well, maybe that's not quite right. And those little like unwelcome intrusions into mm-hmm. your historical mindset when you're out there on your own, you can either shrug those off and just go out and have a good time, or for some people, they really needle at you. And I've become one of those people over the past couple of years, I'm finding. So to keep on enjoying that feeling of an authentic historical experience, I'm going to have to raise the bar. Maybe unfortunately, it's going to be a lot of investment of time and resources, but I'm really excited to see where it takes me.
Nice. So I guess when it comes to resources, if you don't mind me asking, how much how much money do you have to spend on linen for a shirt? What is somebody looking at, budgeting, to do that themselves?
Sure. Yeah, I wouldn't say a whole lot. I mean, when I talk resources very broadly, I'm talking expenditures across my entire college career, which in some cases have been on gear that isn't necessarily correct for the time period. You only find that out later.
Yeah.
Just a testament to why mentorship is so important. But to get your hands on linen for a shirt, I mean, you'll probably get away with about what you'd pay for a nice, t-shirt today, a like designer t-shirt. So I think linen, maybe around $20 a yard. I've seen it for on the cheap end, and you can get different qualities and varieties. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure what linen's going for right now. I ordered a whole bunch last year.
Yeah. Okay.
But got it on a sale. Burnley and Trowbridge is known for having great fabrics. To my understanding, they do a lot of the outfitting and supplying at Colonial Williamsburg. And so, every once in a while you shop those sales. It was the end of the fall season, picked up a lot of really beautiful check pattern linen and some plain linen from them. So I'm really excited to see how all that comes together. But once you got those materials, and especially if you start digging into some of the resources on historical clothing, there's really good stuff coming out on the internet pretty consistently now. It seems like there's people like Nathan Kobuck with their blog articles. He's got the Buffalo Trace 1765 blog. People like that who are sifting through original resources and bringing to light new information all the time. That community is growing of really progressive reenactors who are digging really deep into the shadows of stuff that hasn't been touched in a long time. And so if you can get in touch with some of them, or even if you're just able to read the articles, that can really help you out in terms of finding authentic fabrics and sewing techniques and things like that.
Those are some great pointers. I never really thought of myself as a tailor, but the hand sewing that I've done this year has really been fun. I was really apprehensive to try it. I thought I could never do it, and I'm not saying that it's great, but it's a nice, clean skill. I can do it on the couch in the evenings, when the family's just kind of hanging out together. We might be watching something or listening to some music, and I'm not making a lot of noise, and I'm not making a lot of dust or shavings or anything that I got to clean up later. So it's been really fun to kind of get into that, and I hope it is for you as well.
Yeah, that's a good point about it being a clean skill. I'm frequently dyeing leather bags, and sometimes I just get carried away and caught up in the process and forget to put the rubber gloves on.
Yep.
And I'll end up at work, with my hands just dyed black from all the leather dye. But a bad night of sewing is maybe a couple pinpricks, and that's it. Yep. So it is a much cleaner side of the hobby, I think. And in the little bit of hand sewing that I've done so far, and I've got a shirt cut out right now on my living room floor.
Okay.
I'm going to be getting down to this week. I'm really excited about, but the little bit of hand sewing I've done already, I surprisingly have really enjoyed. I never would have expected that. I remember I had to learn in scouting back in the day, and it really didn't take. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was silly. But when I've put together these little housewife sewing kits and things and sent those to friends, and it really is a neat skill, and the sense of accomplishment when you've completed one of those projects is just like anything else. It was just like finishing my rifle, or a shot bag. You're able to hold in your hands your own creation. And if you've done it right and you've sewn it well, that's something that could service your entire, span in this hobby. So it's an exciting thing to be able to create clothing on your own.
So apart from the completely hand sewn outfit, or get up, I suppose, for the next year, which time is ticking, my friend. Time is ticking.
It sure is. Yep.
What are some of your other goals, as you head through this year as somebody who's trying to constantly improve their setup and their research and things?
Sure. Yeah. One of my biggest goals really is to improve the way in which I share those things. I think the biggest thing that I've struggled with as a content creator is consistency. And that's, I think, due to two reasons. First of all, I'm so detail oriented that I can just invest a lot of time into one video. And if it doesn't necessarily do as well as some others, in context of the channel, you can get kind of disillusioned, and maybe I'm not as willing to crack open the computer and edit my most recent adventure as quickly as I might otherwise. So that's one side of it is just the extreme detail orientedness and the time consuming nature of editing content at a level that I kind of demand for myself. And the second is just a complete reluctance to put out anything that I might discover is wrong in another year or two. As I've ventured down this path of really shooting for authenticity, I've very suddenly noticed glaring issues in my kit in terms of the fit of my clothing and things of that nature that I really wish I could go back into past videos and correct. So that's caused me in a couple of cases to take down prior videos. I had one about Frontier clothing at a time when I really didn't know much about Frontier clothing. I did a load of research and put a lot of time into that video. But some of the very articles of clothing that I'm referring to didn't look quite right on my body, or else I was calling a hunting shirt a frock. And funny little inaccuracies like that don't quite match what you see in period things. So overcoming those things, being willing to push out the content, regardless of whether it's perfect or not, either in the editing or in the actual content itself and its authenticity, I think are going to be two sort of challenges to overcome. But the ultimate goal has always been one video a month. And I think I'm very close to pulling the trigger on a cadence like that. I've gotten quite a bit of footage amassed so that there's no excuse not to get out, bad weather, anything like that. I've got enough footage now in my pocket that I could go 3 or 4 months without having to go out to film. So with a little backlog of content like that kind of ready and in my back pocket, I think I'm ready to push off. And I hope in the next 1 to 2 months to really drop gears into that cadence, which I'll try and continue for absolutely as long as I can.
Yeah.
So that consistency is a big one in getting that content out. I've also started to look at, linen for clothing might be cheap, but there's other parts of the hobby that aren't necessarily. And so throughout my college career, I did the rifle build, was part of a university grant. And as a component of that program, I had to track my expenses. And so just as kind of a hobby thing, I decided, I'm going to keep doing that. I had a little spreadsheet made for it. And have continued to do that and have continued to spend money on the hobby over the past 5 years. So I'd like to try and break even on the hobby in the distant future, has always been a goal. Not to make this a for-profit venture, but I do have really big plans for what Frontier Trading Company could become. And those things are larger than a YouTube channel. All my life since I was 14, I've pictured a week-long historically immersive program for young people to get out into the woods in a mock fort, wooden walled Martin Station sort of location, and really fall in love with history the way I was able to do at that summer camp where I spent my childhood summers. I want to share that experience with other people. I want to share the passion for the time period with young people especially. So that's always been the goal. And I've always thought, someday far in retirement, maybe I'll have enough money to approach the scout camp where I grew up and suggest funding a program like that. Mm-hmm. But now, maybe it's like the ambition of a young man or something like that. But I'm looking forward into the future thinking I don't want to wait until I'm 50 or 60 years old to do that. I would like to begin to set a foundation for a program like that now. Mm-hmm. And so I've launched a little website. I got frontiertradingcompany.org. I'm trying to get a storefront going so that I can break even on the hobby, sure. But all of that money will always be contained to the Frontier Trading Company brand. And whether that's breaking even on some of the money that I've invested in the channel so far, and then eventually I hope beginning to save or invest for a future program that I hope will give the scouts, the program that I grew up in, a run for its money. There's a lot of areas for improvement that I'm really excited about and would just love to see happen in my lifetime, especially at an age where I'm still able to get out and enjoy it. So yeah. That's all really, really distant stuff, but it's the stuff of dreams. And when I get caught up thinking about the channel, that's where my mind goes, is into that distant future vision for an immersive program like that and the resources that it'll take to get something like that off the ground. So more than anything, I want to share the passion for the time period, and I want to be able to set a foundation to continue to do that on a increasingly larger scale, if that makes sense. Yeah, it does. Yeah. And I think it's really honorable. I love that. I love that is your kind of guiding light when it comes to all of this. It's really easy to look at things like YouTube and the videos as, just kind of goofy or fun. But I think that
and just about everybody that I talk to, really, and whether on the show or just in personal interactions in the community here, that there's that guiding goal or mission to make sure this gets shared and this is found everywhere. I mean, it's something that comes up, I think, coming off of every large event, out of the attendees is wanting to see more people involved and more young people and more young families and things at these events. And so I think I really love hearing that part of it. I've heard it before from you, but it gets me excited every time that you bring it up, because I know that you're not forgetting that original calling to it. And I think I just love that, because that's how we keep all of this going. And I think it's an actionable thing that you can focus on and work towards. Right now you've got a shirt cut out and laid out on your living room floor, but that shirt is another one of those bricks into that foundation to build, kind of the future of this community and of this hobby. Just like, everything we've talked about here today, whether it's Friendship or Martin Station or School of the Long Hunter, started as that kind of thing, and whether it's you or you, Alex, or if it's somebody listening, don't forget that thing that you want something to be someday, because that's how that happens. And those things don't happen. These events don't happen without that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really powerful advice. And I cling to the fact that things like that have been done before. You have Rockefellers with Colonial Williamsburg, and Henry Ford with Greenfield Village created a village that included his childhood farm outside of Detroit, where he was manufacturing Ford automobiles, and was able to do that within his own lifetime. Could spend nights in his childhood bedroom and wake up and make breakfast on the stove that his mom cooked eggs on when he was a boy, and could sit and reflect on the generational change that he had ushered into America and his manufacturing. I love stories like that. I'm constantly inspired by people who have been very successful within their own lifetimes and have then turned and looked to the past as their source for inspiration and have then shared that with others. Some of my greatest Christmas memories are at Greenfield Village with my mom. It's an annual trip up there every year. And just to see the impact that people can have when they reach back into the past, bring that up into the present, is really inspiring, So programs like that have existed before, and I don't think you have to be a Henry Ford billionaire to pull it off. So it's exciting, and it's definitely that North Star to shoot for, and certainly appreciate all the kind words.
What is, if you had a couple tips for somebody, whether it's about the clothing or if it's about, your marksmanship training, what's a couple tips you'd like to leave the listeners with for this round?
Whew, that's a great question. A lot of things come to mind. Most central and maybe most rewarding to me of all the advice that I've received is to look to the period resources. I read The Frontiersman, and that was an initial kind of kick in the pants. I realized how tough some of those guys were, and I upgraded out of the Nike sneakers. I started going barefoot kind of in the woods, at least in my moccasins, and tried to get a little more rugged. But there's great source material to be found in the footnotes of those Alan Eckert books. And if you really want to get academic, you can read some of the original journal accounts of a lot of long hunters, whatever persona you're shooting for. There's a lot of really interesting areas of this hobby. But I'm much more the long hunter persona. I grew up in that kind of frontiersman mindset. So I'm looking to, further pursue that. And so I've started to double down and read some of those accounts. Was inspired enough by Thomas Walker's account, first Euro-American to cross through the Cumberland Gap, or at least to write about having done so in a way that could be confirmed later on. That I made my own podcast episode effectively for the first time, reading that account and then breaking it down in an analysis afterwards. That sort of content, I think, is really helpful. Meat Eater has done a great job starting to really broadcast some of that long hunter type content that's bringing a lot of modern hobby enthusiasts, I think, back to those muzzleloading roots, which I really respect and appreciate. So getting into the period resources, whether it's, something that you're able to find on the internet or looking at really, there are some fantastic, contemporary works that have drawn on a lot of different sources from the time periods. Whichever you're looking at, getting into those period sources is just going to propel you forward in this hobby like nothing else will. It will also save you money. Maybe the second biggest tip behind looking at period resources directly is not to spend money on something until you've had it checked over, preferably by a hobby mentor, somebody who can go to the webpage and look at it. Or, in my case at Friendship, there's a couple of people that I've approached and said, hey, I'd really appreciate your opinion on a buffalo hide that I purchased for several $100s. Mm-hmm. That mentor was able to walk over and say, yep, looks good, pull the trigger. And I did. And you spend that money confidently, and in a year or 2 years or 10, you won't be kicking yourself thinking, man, I should have spent this on something else. So that's another really, it can be an expensive hobby, but if you spend your money appropriately and you go into it a little frugally and look for those opportunities to confirm with hobby mentors whether what you're about to purchase is truly accurate, you're not just buying off looks and what looks cool, then you'll be able to save a lot of that money along your journey. And then third, find people. I did this hobby for many years completely alone, isolated. That program that I was in at that summer camp back in the day, as camp staff, we had no historical oversight. That's how I got through a summer wearing Nike sneakers. We had leather on hand. I just didn't know how to use it. Had we had one person to step up and say, hey, here's a great video resource about this, it could have changed everything. The trajectory of the hobby, I could have been exponentially further ahead than I am now. And for a long time, I resisted help. I was too proud of my gear. Now I look at my hunting shirt and I kind of cringe because I just can't wait to have one that's hand sewn that fits me really well. And at the time, if somebody would have told me, hey, the fit on that isn't quite right, I might have written them off entirely and thought, oh, they're just a hater. You really have to be open, first of all, to that criticism, but also to letting other people into this world, because the hobby is bigger than every one of us as an individual. And when you embrace that community aspect of it, that's when you get out and those barriers start to fall down. My intimidation about firing my rifle, I may never have gotten over that if I didn't head to Friendship and find shooters like yourself that are willing to hit the woods walk with a beginner and throw around some tips and tricks and things. So yeah, I think dig into period resources, spend your money really wisely, and then embrace the community. Those three things, you really can't go wrong if you're doing all three of those.
Yeah, I think those are some great tips. I think regardless of where you're at, if you're just getting started or if you've been in it for 20 years, I think that's still some solid advice.
Yep, I sure hope so. And I guess in another 20 years, we'll see. I look back and I'm sure I'll have even more. We'll
cut now to the future reactions of Alex and Ethan. Making fun of our past selves. Hey, what did you think of the Kalamazoo Living History show? That was your first time at that event, and I don't know that I ever asked you about it.
Yeah, that was a big step in embracing the community as well. I'd never been to anything like that before. I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of vendors up there, and once again, as far as the mentorship goes, great access to there's content creators like yourself walking around. Peter Kelly of the Woodland Escape YouTube channel was there, looking to stock up. And you bump into all kinds of interesting artisans who are doing really fantastic work. I was very impressed by it, and it was well worth. I think I drove about 2 hours up there and 2 hours home. Well worth the drive to get up to Kalamazoo and take a look around, meet some new people. Got to, make some new friends, and just very cool to see the community come out and to realize that you are by no means alone in this love for the past. It's very much alive today.
Good. I'm glad you had a good time. It's one of my favorite shows every year. I was glad to see you there.
Yeah. I was very glad to be there, and thank you for the invite. I don't know that I would have made it up there had you not said something about it. So yeah, great event and very well worth the time.
Good deal. Good. So tell me about, I think, kind of rounding out here, I don't want to take up your whole evening, but tell me about your bags and tell me about offering them for sale like you are. I want you to be able to plug that a little bit because, it's something you've been working on for a long time, and the quality of your work is just stellar.
I really appreciate that. especially as a young person. Like I said, initially ambition, I suppose, is to try and break even on the channel. But above that, especially as I've gotten into some real source material and have done some research beyond the first level of books that are frequently recommended on, the different forums and things about leatherworking and bag making. I'm by no means a professional, most definitely still a hobbyist, but there are a couple things that I think I do differently. And the time that I spend on each bag is truly significant. Once I've priced in that labor, unfortunately, I think that in some cases, the cost of those bags can become prohibitive. And so as I was looking at a model to help other people get their hands on really authentic shooting gear, and I hope, to expand that product line to include other gear in the maybe near to distant future, as I was looking for opportunities to get that gear in as many hands as possible, really identified the potential to start making bag kits. So what I'm striving to do right now, and I'm hoping to launch either this week or next. So by the time your listeners are hearing this, you very well may be able to go over to the site, frontiertradingcompany.org, and take a look at some of these bag kits. But the intention here is to have pre-punched, pre-finished leather pieces that can be sewn together with pre-dyed, pre-waxed thread. And in doing so, it's all the preparation work that I would do sitting here in my shop. But you can do the physical labor. I think, first of all, and I'm drawing heavily on the experience that I had assembling my rifle, which was just maybe one of the better weeks of my life, working with some of my initial hobby mentors to put this Kibler kit together. I really feel a sense of ownership over that gun, and I feel like I know it very intimately, not like something that I could have picked up off of a store shelf. And I think that a lot of people's gear does come off of those store shelves, in some cases guns, not always, but even down to your smaller pieces of gear. If you've put it together yourself, you just value it so much more. And maybe you come a little closer to valuing that gear the same way that somebody may have in the time period. And if it's of the same quality, all the better. So that's what I'm striving for, to give people that opportunity to put something together themselves. It makes it very cost effective. I think I'll be able to offer it for a price point far below what my finished bags are currently going for. And so I'm really excited about that too. But yeah, I think overall, I'm trying to compete on quality with my finished work. The prices will be what they are. Unfortunately, the cost of labor and supplies and everything, it makes those a little expensive, but I'm still really excited to get those to market. And then those kits, I'm really looking forward to helping people get into some quality gear that they can also feel a sense of ownership for.
No, I think that's a great idea. I think there's been some success in that, in offering bag kits, in the hobby. And I think it's great to see, somebody like yourself offering that kind of alongside the channel. I think that's a fantastic thing to do. And my wife remarked on your recent posts about your bag on Instagram, just how nice of a pitch that it was, talking about the details of the bag with the photography and things. It was really well done. And I love to see it. It's the entrepreneurial side of muzzleloading is really fascinating to me, because it's an industry built on home shops and little cottage businesses, and seeing you just jump right in has just been fantastic.
Yeah. Got to pull the trigger sometime. I've thought about it for a long time. And certainly spent a lot of time on research. And I made a lot of bags that will never see the light of day. They weren't great. And those went up and received a lot of criticism to get them to where they are today. And now I feel really fortunate to have been able to examine a few originals. And I've really dialed in that authenticity. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes.
Great. So what are the next events that you'll be at this year? Where can people track you down and get an autograph?
Yeah, an autograph. I haven't been asked for that one yet. We'll see. I get the CLA show on my calendar. Would like to make it out to the fall shoot, like you mentioned, and maybe do some of those Mountain Man events. And I know you're planning a little long hunter trek at Friendship there at the NMLRA. Is that right? Yeah.
The first weekend of November, I'm hosting a historic trekking weekend to try to share a little bit of the knowledge and suffering that we've both come to enjoy.
And that suffering is open to pretty much anybody that wants to go, right?
Yeah. I want it to be an informative and educational event. So if your historical gear and clothing is encouraged, but you're more than welcome to come out in your blue jeans or your sweatshirts and learn. I know there's going to be several people there that really know their stuff. A lot of the people that I look up to are planning on going and are really excited to share with anybody who can make it out there. So if hanging out in the cold, damp autumn woods sounds like fun to you, it should be before muzzleloading deer season comes in and rifle season comes in for most people in our region. But yeah, I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited the NMLRA is up for hosting an event like that. And it's really the kind of event only made possible because of the privately owned grounds there at the NMLRA. It's something that's becoming increasingly difficult to do in kind of the current climate of things. So it's really nice to have. There's about 550 acres there that can kind of be the playground. This year it's going to be smaller, but there's a lot of potential there for us to have an extended event if people are interested in extended suffering.
Yeah, that's awesome. I personally am definitely very interested, so I will be there. And I'm really looking forward to that. But so far, that's really all that I've got on my calendar. I mentioned School of the Long Hunter is pretty consistent for me, and I'm going to throw Martin Station into that mix. I know there's a couple other big time events that have been mentioned, and I'd like to start getting out more, but I'm definitely right now focused on the channel and trying to upgrade the authenticity, get some bags out and things like that. I guess I'm pulled in a couple different directions. So those are the big ones that are on the calendar for now, and maybe more to come.
Fantastic. That's great. No, I know I'm looking forward to seeing you again and shooting some more and hanging out some more. Hopefully get some campfire time or some ice cream time nonetheless.
Yeah, likewise. Ice cream time doesn't sound too bad. Maybe not in November, but
yeah, not November. Yeah. Right now, ice cream sounds pretty good.
It does. Yeah.
Well, shoot, man. Is there anything else that you'd like to shout out, talk about? Did I miss anything?
No, not necessarily. Nothing comes to mind. Just as always, really appreciate everything that you do for the hobby, giving small-time content creators like me and hobbyists a voice is really impactful. It means a lot. So we all sure appreciate it. And I think you're leading the charge in all things muzzleloading right now. And it's great to see somebody really taking the reins and I think leading the hobby in a really positive direction. So thanks for all that you do.
You got to quit buttering me up, man.
That's true. No, a lot of respect.
I gotta get into a bigger room. My head's not going to fit. No, but thank you. And you don't call yourself a small time. I don't like you talking about yourself like that. I know I'm just your friend, but come on, you're doing a great job. I'm not gonna accept that diminutive self-reflection. I'm not having that. You're driving me nuts. I'm driving to Ohio.
Yeah, come on up. Yeah, come on anytime.
This podcast is brought to you by Thor Bullets. Thor Bullets are a premium full-bore muzzleloader bullet designed specifically for modern inline rifles. Thor Bullets do not require plastic sabots or belts to be fired, meaning less cleaning for you between shots. The patented copper base creates an airtight seal, giving you greater distance and accuracy. Thor's unique engineering allows the bullets to retain 95% of their weight upon impact, and the controlled expansion ensures large, easy-to-follow blood trails. Thor bullets are currently available in a 50 caliber version that is sized to your specific bore. For more information on these great bullets, visit www.thorbullets.com. We'd like to thank Thor Bullets for their sponsorship of this podcast. I'd like to thank Alex once again for coming on and chatting with us. It's not easy to go out and try to figure out how to shoot, especially at the early stage. It's a stage in my life that I've forgotten, and it's always nice to talk with folks like Alex to try to get a refreshed perspective of what it's like to be a new shooter, especially when it comes to muzzleloading and flintlocks, because there's a pretty steep learning curve. So I hope that if you're somebody out there who is new to muzzleloading, I hope that this gave you some ideas, gave you some tips and tricks, or gave you, some assurance that you're not alone in trying to figure this stuff out. Really, I think it it takes time. It takes time and it takes practice. My family's been shooting competitively for a long time. It's still something that comes up in our conversations about muzzleloading marksmanship, is a lot of times it just comes down to trigger time and time behind the trigger to make that count. So I think Alex, like all of his projects, is making strides when it comes to his marksmanship, and will be there in no time, where he's very comfortable and razzing us back a little bit on the woods walks. I'll have some links in the show notes to more of Alex's projects. I'm really excited about what he's doing with the expansion of the Frontier Trading Company this year. I picked up a couple bags from him actually at the Kalamazoo Living History Show that I'm using on or with my Northwest trade gun, and the other I'll be using with my Chambers New England Fowler that I'm going to be building this fall as kind of an early to or a mid to late 18th century arm for that period, and for a lot of the clothing that I've been working on for that period to kind of round out that ensemble. He's doing great work, and I love seeing folks like him progressing and diving into all of this deeper. I mean, he's working a full-time job. He's fresh out of school. There's a lot happening in life, but he really serves as a great representative for working with life as life kind of throws its punches at you, and getting involved and trying to learn as much as you can on the side. So as always, check out Alex's channel at the Frontier Trading Company to follow along a little bit with his journey and learn a little bit along the way. I always learn something, and I really admire the research that he's doing. As we head through summer here, I'll be traveling a little bit more to round out the year. In late July, I'll be at the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton. I'll be down at the seminar area filming more seminars for the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton YouTube channel, where we're trying to document as many of the educational programs at that event to make them publicly available from anywhere in the world 24/7. It's kind of a personal mission and a mission of many of the folks there at the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton. And it's great to be a part of making that goal happen. So if you're interested and you can't attend the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton, check out some of those educational seminars on YouTube, where you can learn more about muzzleloading and hear from some of the contemporary masters out there willing to share their knowledge and their work. And then 2 weeks after that, I'll be at the Contemporary Long Rifle Association annual show in Lexington, Kentucky. It's the first weekend in August. I won't be there necessarily with any muzzleloaders, but I'll be there with some of the traditional crafts and carvings that I've been working on, and just hanging out and having a good time. It's a real laid-back show, and it's a lot of fun talking with folks. So if you're there, if you're in the area in Lexington that weekend, please stop by. It's a great show, great organization. We always have a lot of fun. As always, I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. If you'd like to learn more about this or anything else related to muzzleloading, check out ilovemuzzleloading.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.